Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take the heavy lifting out of being well-informed.
And today we are plunging into a really fascinating nexus of neuroscience and education.
We are, guided by the work of Dr. Judy Willis. She's a board-certified neurologist who made this, a truly remarkable career pivot to become a full-time classroom teacher.
And it's that unique perspective, right? The deep scientific understanding married with the hands-on day-to-day classroom reality. That's what makes her approach so powerful.
Absolutely. Our source material today is from her guide, How Your Child Learns Best. And it's full of these brain-friendly strategies for parents of kids between, say, 3 and 12.
So our mission for this deep dive is to pull out those actionable, scientifically savvy ways for you to support memory, focus, and higher level thinking.
Which is so critical, especially given the current educational environment. Dr. Willis is pretty direct in her critique.
Oh, very. She argues that when school funding gets tied to standardized test scores, the inevitable outcome is a big shift towards rote memorization and drill.
Right, the whole teach to the test model.
Exactly. And she notes that this focus often unintentionally sidelines the very things that really ignite the brain's desire to learn.
Things like creative thinking, exploration, discovery.
All of it. And kids who start out as these naturally enthusiastic learners can pretty quickly become just passive recipients of information. We need tools to counteract that. And her neurological insights really give us the blueprint.
Okay, so let's unpack the science here. Dr. Willis starts by explaining the sheer volume of information the brain has to process. We're talking billions of bits every second.
An incredible amount.
So if the brain is constantly being bombarded, how does it physically decide what data gets through and, what gets ignored?
It has to have highly effective filters.
Yeah.
To prevent total sensory input overload.
Okay.
She identifies two key built-in obstacles that information absolutely must clear to reach the thinking networks of the prefrontal cortex. And she summarizes this with a great acronym, RAD.
RAD. I like that. It's a great hook. Let's start with the R.
That's the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
The RAS.
Yep. Think of this as the brain's initial gatekeeper. It's located deep in the lower brain, and its job is to select the most relevant incoming information and allow it to pass into the conscious, higher-level thinking brain.
And what makes it decide something is relevant? What are its criteria?
Well, the RAS is incredibly responsive to things that signal importance, which neurologically translates to novelty, surprise, color, curiosity.
Expected events.
Exactly. If information is presented in a bland way, think a straight lecture, routine drills, endless repetitive worksheets, the RAS often just fails to engage.
So if a concept is presented passively, is the science showing that it's physically blocked? Does it fail to even reach the parts of the brain needed for thought and memory?
That's precisely the neurological consequence. The information might hit the sensory system, but if the RAS isn't stimulated, the input doesn't get properly flagged. It doesn't get routed to those crucial thinking centers. It's filtered out before conscious processing can even begin.
That's a huge realization for parents and teachers. Okay, moving on. What about the A in RA?
The A is the amygdala, which Dr. Willis often calls the affective filter.
The emotional filter.
Exactly. It's part of the limbic system, which is responsible for processing emotion. So if a child feels high stress or anxiety, the pressure of a test, fear of failure, a negative learning environment, the amygdala automatically flags that input as a threat.
Which instantly diverts resources to the classic fight or flight system.
Right. It sends the information to the automatic survival-focused parts of the brain, and it essentially shuts down the reflective, memory-making, and executive function networks.
So for information to get through, the child has to feel safe.
Safe, engaged, and the emotions associated with learning have to be positive. That's the only way through the amygdala.
And that leads us to the final element, the chemical one, the D.
The dopamine connection.
Yeah.
Dopamine is the key neurotransmitter here. It's released when an experience is associated with pleasure, satisfaction, or even just the expectation of a good outcome.
Ah, the reward chemical.
That's it. And a surge in dopamine directly increases focus, sustains attention, and enhances executive function. It's the brain's way of saying, hey, this is important, do it again.
So successful learning is really this carefully choreographed dance.
It is.
Novelty engages the RAS, emotional safety clears the amygdala, and that positive connection releases dopamine, which then fuels the whole process.
And every single practical strategy Dr. Willis recommends is based on maximizing those 3 RAD pathways.
That foundational understanding is, it's indispensable. But Here's the real-world question. Once we know how the brain filters info, how do we tailor the delivery? Every child processes the world so differently.
That's where we leverage their innate learning strengths. Dr. Willis combines elements of multiple intelligences and established learning styles into two primary categories. This helps parents match instruction to the individual child.
Okay, let's start with the visual spatial kinesthetic learners, the VSK group. What defines them?
VSK learners are inherently attuned to physical space, relationships, and movement. They are the hold before detail thinkers.
They need to see the big picture first.
Yes, the final product.
Yeah.
Their strengths include mentally visualizing things, excellent physical coordination, and using movement or hands-on exploration to really grasp concepts.
This sounds like the child who needs to touch everything, build things, and is just constantly moving.
That's them.
So what kind of activities really lock in learning for them?
Anything active. We're talking about manipulating Legos or blocks to represent abstract ideas, using their own diagrams or art.
Dramatization.
Oh, absolutely. Pantomime to convey historical events or vocabulary. Even simple things like using magnetic letters on a board or physically walking out a math problem engage that essential kinesthetic connection. They really thrive when they can discover a solution before you give them the step-by-step instructions.
So if a VSK child is constantly in motion or, drawing in the margins, it's not misbehavior.
Not at all. It's their brain attempting to process the information in the way it's designed to.
That makes so much sense.
It really does. And when a VSK child is forced into a passive learning situation, say 30 minutes of direct lecture, the struggle isn't willful defiance, it's a neurological mismatch. They might tune out, struggle to articulate the rich visualizations happening in their heads. Dr. Willis really emphasizes this. Their fidgeting might actually be their brain trying to process.
Okay, now let's look at the other main group, the auditory sequential or AS learners. How do they contrast with the VSK kids?
AS learners show a high sensitivity to sounds, structured patterns, logic, and order. They are the part-to-whole thinkers.
The opposite of VSK.
Exactly. They prefer concepts broken down into logical sequential steps, and they generally thrive on activities where there is one clear, correct answer.
So the VSK child is making this intuitive leap based on a visual pattern, while the AS child is following the necessary steps one by one to make sure the logic holds up.
That's the core difference. For the AS learner, preferred activities involve sound and sequence. Think using rhythm and rhymes like classic Dr. Seuss books or sequential matching games.
Like matching words that end in ook.
Perfect example. They strengthen their auditory memory by listening to and repeating words, and they excel at deductive reasoning games where they work sequentially to figure things out.
And what challenges do AS learners run into?
They often struggle significantly with nonverbal or spatial concepts, so geometry can be confusing at first. And crucially, they may have a really hard time understanding a big concept unless they first master all the foundational steps and the logic connecting them.
So if they miss one step in a process,
The whole structure can just collapse for them, leading to a lot of frustration. They need that sense of completeness and order.
this framework is really clear, but what if a child seems to be a mix? Do we have to pick a lane?
She advises that most children do lean more strongly in one direction, but even if they are balanced, the solution is always the same. Diversify the sensory input.
So try a VSK strategy, and if it works, great. If not,
You shift to an AS strategy. The ultimate goal, regardless of the label, is using multisensory learning to engage as many brain pathways as possible.
that's a perfect segue. Let's look at specific strategies for common academic hurdles. Dr. Willis says multisensory learning is the foundation. Why does it work so well?
Well, multisensory input, seeing, hearing, touching, moving, it's effective because it connects multiple brain regions to a single lesson.
Creating duplicated memory storage.
That's the key.
Yeah.
That redundancy means if one retrieval path is temporarily blocked, the brain has other ways to recall the information. It results in faster and more accurate retrieval.
Can you walk us through a basic example?
Sure. If a child is learning the word drum, they aren't just reading it on a page that's visual.
Right.
They hear the word auditory. And then they might tap their hands on the desk in a rhythm that's tactile kinesthetic. So that single concept drum is now stored across 3 distinct sense memory centers. The knowledge is just far more robust.
It's much harder to forget. Okay, let's move into reading and vocabulary for ages, say, 7 to 11. Dr. Willis emphasizes achieving word ownership.
Ownership is all about making the word personal and deeply connected in the neural networks. You get that through active word processing, not just passively copying a dictionary definition.
Acting words out, creating word maps.
Finding personal relevance for a word, that's what builds ownership.
So how does this look for a VSK learner trying to master spelling or sight words?
They need visual confirmation of their success and, of course, physical movement. A fantastic VSK strategy is creating a large wall poster with high-frequency words. As they master a word, they use a sticky note to cover it up.
So they can see their progress.
Exactly. Seeing the number of visible words shrink provides powerful visual evidence of their progress. It's incredibly motivating. For spelling, they can use kinesthetic visualization. When they spell a word, they stand up tall for letters like T or L and squat for short letters like A or O.
They're literally embodying the shape of the word.
They are. It creates a physical memory marker.
That's brilliant. What about the AS learner for vocabulary?
They thrive on auditory reinforcement and logic. So they do well using audio recordings of words and their definitions. Or parents can play a sequential deductive game, like Word Detective.
How does that work?
For a word like opaque, you start with a really abstract clue like, it describes a lack of clarity. If they don't get it, you give the next clue. It's often used to describe light or glass. You give these increasingly specific sequential clues until the child deduces the definition.
And the victory of figuring it out releases that dopamine.
Exactly. It reinforces the logical structure of the new word.
For reading comprehension, she talks about graphic organizers.
Right, which are essentially physical patterning tools. A Venn diagram is a superb example. It helps kids compare and contrast, moving abstract analysis into a concrete spatial exercise.
And how do you make a Venn diagram multi-M sensory?
You encourage kids to make them physical. Use string or colored yarn on the floor to make the circles. Have them find small objects or pictures to physically place inside the overlapping and the unique sections.
So for comparing dogs and birds, shared attributes go in the middle.
Right, breathe air, have hearts. And unique attributes like can fly or barks go in the outer circles. It transforms abstract comprehension into this tactile spatial patterning game.
Let's shift to math. It so often triggers immense stress.
It does.
We talked about the amygdala filter slamming shut under anxiety. How do we open that emotional filter for math specifically?
We need to do two things. Strategies to reduce that learned helplessness, anxiety, and ways to build motivation through positive emotion. The most effective immediate strategy is previewing.
Okay, tell us more about that.
Before a new math lesson is introduced at school, you spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes with your child just reading the next day's text or looking at the example.
They won't fully grasp it yet.
No, and that's not the point. The point is that the background familiarity reduces the acute stress response they feel when a new, unfamiliar concept is introduced in class. It gets rid of that, oh no, I'm going to be confused again, reflex. It keeps the amygdala calm.
It makes the new information feel a little less foreign when they see it in the classroom.
Precisely. And then we use humor and visuals to link abstract concepts to positive emotion, to get that dopamine connection. Dr. Willis encourages using corny but memorable narratives and drawings.
I love the examples in the source material. Give us one of those corny math narratives.
Okay, when introducing the hypotenuse in a right triangle, she suggests imagining a simple gallows structure built with a right angle. Then you draw a pot hanging from the rope noose.
A pot in a noose.
The pot in a noose story is used to remember the word hypotenuse and its position as the longest side. The slight shock and humor create that positive emotional marker.
That is terrible, but I guarantee you I will never forget it now.
It works. Or consider polygons. For open versus closed polygons, she suggests drawing a closed polygon with a little bird named Polly inside. Then she opens a polygon by erasing one side and says, when the polygon is open, Polly is gone.
Polygon, that's great.
The humor and the strong visual pattern create this robust, emotionally charged memory.
Okay, so we've covered getting the information in and past the filters. But the ultimate goal is long-term retention, right? Moving beyond short-term memory.
Right, and long-term memory relies on two core brain functions. Patterning, which is the meaningful organization of information, and neuroplasticity, which is the physical growth of new neural connections. The information isn't patterned and connected, it just won't stick.
So if new information doesn't relate to anything the child already knows, it's easily lost.
Correct. This demands the strategy of activating prior knowledge. Dr. Willis calls it relational memory building. New information has to link to existing memory circuits.
So before reading a book about, say, polar bears,
A parent should prime the brain. Talk about what the child already knows about animals or cold weather, or maybe look at old photos from a zoo visit. That discussion stimulates the relevant neural networks, getting them ready to connect to the new information in the book.
Another strategy she highlights is metacognition, thinking about thinking. How do you practice that?
Through note-making. This is more than just copying things down. You take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. Factual notes, data, definitions, they go on one side.
And on the other side?
The note-making column. That's where the child records their own thoughts, questions, points of confusion, or personal connections.
So if they're a VSK learner, they might draw a little symbol, like an R for reminds me of something, instead of writing a whole sentence. They're actively monitoring their own comprehension.
Exactly. This forces them to reflect on how they are processing the material, which reinforces the successful strategies they used. Dr. Willis emphasizes this whole thing is a cycle. When a child uses their learning strengths and finds a personal connection, they stay engaged. They participate enthusiastically.
And that strengthens the whole learning process. Learning promotes learning.
It's a true positive feedback loop.
Which brings us back to the core message of this deep dive. Success really stems from understanding the brain's filters RAD, then identifying your child's learning strengths, VSK or AS, and then enriching lessons with these multisensory, personalized activities.
It's about building mastery, organization, and confidence, not just chasing the next test score. And that parental partnership is central to the long-term goal. By helping your child feel in control of their own learning, you're building life skills organization, goal-setting resilience that the standardized system might inadvertently sacrifice.
We have to leave you with this final provocative thought straight from the source. Dr. Willis notes that when parents engage as learning partners, they are, and I'm quoting here, growing your own dendrites, strengthening your own memory, and expanding your interests and knowledge.
It's so powerful. We always focus on the child's academic success.
But consider this cognitive reward for yourself, the parent. What untapped memory potential and lost brain growth might you be incurring if you don't participate in your child's joyful, brain-friendly learning journey? Something to mull over until our next deep dive.